In 2024, because of my work and efforts in the previous Congress, I was charged with a task force to investigate some of the most grisly crimes in U.S. history, starting out with the assassination of John F. Kennedy. What I can tell you, and I would say that this model of transparency in the declassification of the JFK records is literally what they should be doing with Jeffrey Epstein.
Because one of the things I asked him is, I said, I get it, but I don't get it. The children. You got to, I have such a problem with this. You got to explain this one to me. And he said, well, first of all, you're looking at it the wrong way. I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, they don't define children the way you do. They don't define the world the way you do. The choices that you face are not their choices, right? They look at it completely differently. And I said, well, okay, so how do they look at it? And he said, for them, everything is defined by their one fundamental, all-consuming purpose. I said, which is what? He said, to defeat God, right? Because this is the moment. I mean, for them, it's about the real God. The true gods are them and Satan, right? And so he said, children are the closest thing on earth to God, because we are created in the image of God. And as you know, from the moment we're created, we haven't had time to be corrupted and to stray.
After police say she was abducted, and there is video right there showing the woman being carried away by a man. Katira Winfrey spoke to a neighbor whose home security camera alerted him that something was not right.
She was kicking and screaming. He was carrying her, and it just stood out to me as.
Police say this video shows a glimpse of a Chinese immigrant woman's attempted escape from suspected trafficker Jose Carcamo. Authorities say he's the man seen carrying the struggling victim back to where she'd reportedly been held captive for days.
It's just like I said, it's just so close to home that it's something like.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen, and one and only James Williams, also known as Dark Waters. And I'm excited today because I have an opportunity to hold a conversation with Joe Hoff. If you guys are not familiar with the Gateway Pundit, and you don't visit the Gateway Pundit, it's one of the fastest growing conservative, truthful news sites out there. And when you look into the Gateway Pundit and how it started essentially like many of us who are on YouTube started. They decided they didn't like the news sources that were out there. They were going to be news aggregators. And then it blew up because people were looking for truth. And it's that truth, ladies and gentlemen, that allows you and me to participate in this war for freedom. Because if we can't get the right information, then we don't know which direction to go in. Joe, how's it going today with you, my friend?
Hey, I'm great. Thanks for having me, James. Appreciate it.
Let's start here. Just a couple of quick questions to bring the audience up to speed. How has it been since you guys started this journey to do this, to do the Gateway Pundit? How has it been for you guys? I think we all experience similar things, but you guys have risen to on the mountain of influence as it pertains to kind of print media to a place that other people haven't. How's it been for you guys?
Well, that's a great question. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'll give you a story here, just maybe to start off about the Gateway Pundit. But thanks for having me. Thanks for the great prayer offline before we started this show. That was really, really powerful. So, and you're really hitting it too. As a matter of fact, I've got a prayer group, 24-hour prayer group that prays for me every day on the hour. And they've been praying for President Trump every day on the hour since he won the election in 2016.
And Gamaliel said, because of one man, it is better for one man. It is better for one man to die for the whole country. Wait a minute. That means God can look and zero in on one thing and then say, this is it. This is the reason why I'm doing this. And all of you will be crying everywhere and saying, this is not the right one. This is not the right one. You'll be crying everywhere. Most need to understand one thing. This is what God is doing. He is resetting the clock. The world had lost its compass. The needle was facing somewhere else when we were supposed to go north. So the idea of God was simple. And I mentioned it for years.
Yes, sir.
That we need a spiritual reset.
Yes, sir.
That's very true.
Because of moral decadence.
Yes, sir.
How can a boy be a girl and a girl be a boy? See, when I bring it to these basic components, as I'm talking like this in this conversation,
Yes, sir.
for you to think that congresswomen and congressmen can be asked what is a boy and can't answer. In America.
What is a woman? What is a woman is the question.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Dems, and let's look at their net favorable ratings. Whoa, woof. I mean, my God, you know, we mentioned CNN. We had that poll come out a little while ago on their net favorable rating. They were 26 points underwater. You think that's low enough? How about we go even lower? We'll go to this side of the screen. I'm going to walk over here. We go to the Wall Street Journal, minus 30 points underwater. Their lowest on record. These polls have records going all the way back since the early 1990s. And when it comes to the Democratic Party's net favorable rating in both the Wall Street Journal poll and the CNN poll, the Democratic Party is breaking records in the way, Jessica Dean, you don't want to break records.
Yeah.
Even in Africa, it's getting here.
Yes, sir. It's getting in.
Botswana is getting in now.
It's getting in.
That's true.
It's like we are playing with a certain way. We are playing with a certain demonic agenda that has allowed us to actually remove our morals and choose whatever we just feel. If you feel you are a boy, then you are a boy. We allow men to get into women's bathrooms. And our feminists around the world are actually accepting it, that it's okay. If a man thinks he's a woman, let them get in. For how long was it going to stay? At least we have 5 years.
Yes, sir.
A reprieve, so to speak. We have 5 years where we can just say, okay, we have been given a mandate by God to shift. And I want to say this before we go any further. I prophesied in one location where I said, Trump is a Cyrus.
That's it, say.
And Cyrus was used by God.
Yes, sir.
Doesn't mean to say he himself is of God.
Yes, sir.
So by talking about Trump, we are not saying, wow, look at the litmus test, the real example of what it is to be a man of God. No, we're not saying that.
Not a bishop.
We are looking at the principles. We're looking at the policies. Some of them line up with scripture.
Yes, sir.
So if they line up with scripture, then we look at the opposite side. And I was trying to figure out, does Kamala have children? I'm not saying if you don't have children, you're a problem. But when you don't, maybe by choice, maybe by medical issues, and you have got your husband's kids as your kids, and you're showing them to the world as your family, it will be so easy for you to line up with anything that destroys family values.
Yes, sir.
I'm passing the phone to the next mayor of New York City who's going to make New York happier, healthier, and more affordable.
And I'm passing the phone back to the people of New York City because we have 51 days to win this election. 51 days to turn the page on a chapter of failed leadership in our city, and 51 days to finally deliver a city.
That's right.
So she became the poster child for Planned Parenthood.
Wow.
You know?
Wow.
Talking about abortion, and people are still thinking it's not a sin to abort a child. Oh, what if someone rapes me? Still is a sin to abort.
Yes, sir.
Because the Bible says children are a gift from God.
Yes, sir.
In a way, you know, they're an inheritance.
Yes, sir.
Implicit. They are in there. So it implies that children are actually gifts from God.
Yes, sir.
And if they are gifts from God, it doesn't matter how it comes.
That's
By
right.
FedEx,
That's right.
by Amazon.
But still, they are coming.
It's still they're coming. Listen to me. Get to a point where you say, you know what? I might not like this person, but he got it right here. I might not like Trump, But guess what? He's actually lining up with biblical principles. Whatever the policies are, we are not saying he is the Savior Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
And every day, and they got people around the world that are jumping in at, odd hours, and people in the States that get up in the middle of the night to keep the prayers going overnight. And I believe their prayers saved Trump's life. We all know it was a miracle.
Yes.
And their prayers had a big part of it. So I agree with what you're saying too. This is a spiritual war. It's real clear. And it's a challenging war. I mean, this is ruthless. And there must be something really beautiful about us. I love this saying. I heard Mel Gibson share this recently on Joe Rogan. He said there must be something really magical about us human beings, because there's beings in other dimensions, like evil angels and good angels fighting over us. So there's something real special about being a human, and it's really important that we remember that, and that we just continue to fight, as Trump said a year and 2 days ago. It's so important. And think about that, and I'm sure you have, that he said that, and I think that's going to go down in history 1,000 years from now. Shakespeare of the future will be writing stories about Trump and Melania against evil Hillary and Obama and stuff like that. So it's going to be, it's really, we're living through history right now, and so it's really important that we continue to fight, because we're real close. We're real close to this thing flipping. To me, total communism, total evil is what that means. Total fascism, total evil. I was just out for a walk before this, trying to get one in, because I got a couple more interviews today, and I just wanted to. I was thinking about, this is it. They're all the same, whether it be Nazis, fascists, communists. They all look at us, godly creatures, beautiful creatures, as peasants, as nothingness, nothing beautiful about us. They are the ones that set the laws. We have to abide by them. They don't. And they can do whatever they want, and we can't. And if we complain, then we get, charged. We're the villains in their world. And so that's not the way God wants us to live, and that's not the way we want to live. We've had freedom for our whole lives, and we don't want to lose this. So right now is the point in time for us to stand up. And the 3 words of Trump, when he said it, I thought he maybe cussed, and then it just couldn't hit me down the soul level. That's what he said. 3 words: fight, fight, fight. I think I heard him recently say something. I believe I heard this right, that he said it wasn't me that said that. He said something else happened. Somebody else took over. He stood up and said, fight, fight, fight. And it was so important. And, I've learned too recently, I grew up Catholic, by the way, good Catholic mom, beautiful mom, prayed for us every day. And she taught us about saints. There's a number of saints that are warriors. People don't realize that. St. Louis and some of these guys were warriors. Joan of Arc. And because God knows that we have to fight. There's times that you have to fight. It's for the future, our children, and for godliness, so that's where we're at right now. So you're right. So anyway, I'll tell you a bit about Gateway Pundit. Jim started it, my twin brother, back in 2004. I was in the corporate world. We were both in St. Louis. So Gateway stands for Gateway to the West. There's the arch in St. Louis. They call it the Gateway to the West because settlers would go through St. Louis. It was like one of the few places on the Mississippi that people could cross the river a couple hundred years ago. And so it was called the Gateway to the West, and that's where Jim lived at that time, and he started this website. He called it a blog. I didn't even know what a blog was. I've said that a number of times. And then that was about, like I said, 2004. There wasn't much on the net. Breitbart was starting. Western Journal was starting. So Andrew Breitbart and Fred Brown, I think is his last name, from Western Journal. Great guys. They all... they all started going. Jim started. They started sharing his stuff. Eventually, it just grew. He grew through the love and support of other people that recognized what he was doing was right, and they helped each other. They lifted each other, and he would call me. I was in the corporate world, and he'd call me, say, "Joe, man, Instapundit just retweeted, just shared my post and linked back to them. And that's what they would do too. There was this, when they're not taking credit for other people's work, they're linking to their work because it doesn't, you don't gain anything by just putting it up as if it's yours, quite frankly.
Right.
You don't lose anything by linking to them. You bless them. And so I think that's always been Jim's principle too. So these guys would link back to Gateway Pundit, put up some of his articles, and they would get then people that would send people to a site, and then eventually people started coming to a site on their own. And then eventually it grew. When Obama was elected in 2008, a lot of that helped. There was a lot of people that weren't happy with the stuff they were seeing there. He promised to every bill we're going to get to see, and then within like a few weeks, the stimulus bill comes out. Nobody got to see it. It was just a big old, billions and billions and billions, trillions to his cronies, and nobody knew what was in it. And that's when Pelosi says, well, we have to pass the bill so we know what's in it.
I remember that.
Remember that?
I remember that. You have to pass the bill to see what's in the bill. I was like, wait, what?
What?
What do you mean?
A month ago, you were saying something different, right? So those were dark years, I think, and they have been really since then. To me, I think a lot of people are now criticizing the Bushes, and maybe rightly so. But I thought the turning point was when Obama stepped in. And I don't know, I think he was being run by somebody else, quite frankly. And that's what these guys said that started praying for Trump. 8 years ago when he won that election, this guy had a vision. A guy from Romania, minister, said he was up in the ceiling in the Oval Office looking down, and these guys are telling Obama, how could you let this happen? You've got to fix this. So as if he was being led by somebody else. And so, which isn't surprising, especially after watching Biden these last 4 years. And it's evil. You can see they're not being led by good people. They're being led by monsters. And so anyways, that's when they started praying for Trump every day because they were, fearful of his life. And today he's our president. So miracles happen, right? So anyways, Jim grew, the Gateway Pundit grew. My career was in corporate. I'd earned like 10 degrees and designations. I have a CPA, MBA, and I was climbing the ladder in the finance and audit world in a big corporation, and had the opportunity to fly around the world as a director of international audit. I got to see all these great cities and visit all our companies that we were setting up that were growing. I'd walk in and make sure everything was on the up and up and report back to the board of directors that, this looks great. Here's a couple of things we noticed. There's things they need to change. Yeah, it looks like it's going to be a good business, whatever. And most all our businesses did do well. There's a couple that didn't, but it was a geographic expansion at first, and then we got into other areas. And I just happened to be at this company at the right time and got to see the world, and that was exciting. And then that led me to a trip overseas to Hong Kong where I met my wife, my future wife, and we got married. She came to the States, and I at that point took over a finance job in the same corporation where I was overseeing a couple $1 billion block of business, financial reporting. And this is really important, how God prepares us for where we're at today, right? I had this great education. I was gaining incredible experience. I knew all these players around the world. I'd visited their offices. I've met them. And then all of a sudden, I'm running a big block of business that's overseas in Asia Pacific, from like India and Australia up to Japan and New Zealand and all in between. It was pretty, again, that job was really, really busy, and I learned a lot, and here's what they taught me in the corporate world. And I'm saying this because I've been going around the country comparing this to what's going on with our elections. Okay. So in the corporate world, everything has to be perfect. When I got that job, the guy who hired me, I asked, what do you want? He just slammed his fist on the table, said perfection. And that's it. You can't have anything less. You've got to be perfect. You can't skirt anything. The numbers have to be accurate. You have to, it's your duty and job. We don't want anybody coming to us and saying, hey, that number's not right. Because in the corporate world, that can mean bankruptcy.
Right.
And then in 2004, after a couple big companies failed, the government, the politicians put in place another law called the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, which I've been talking about a lot lately with our election, because of our elections don't have anything equivalent. But in the corporate world, we had to not just make sure that we had support for every single entry we put in the book. So if you got a sale, you get a receipt, there's your support. And it has to be usually independent, so from somebody outside the company. You can't have somebody in a back room manufacturing this
receipt,
stuff.
right?
Right? And so for every entry, you got to have support. And it's signed off on by 2 people, and that's how the entries get booked into the financials. Well, they then in 2004 they mandated that all corporations have to also make sure that all processes behind that are involved in the booking of the financials, anything related to the financial reporting, had to be tested and made sure there's no exceptions, and on an annual basis signed off on. If there was a misstatement in any financials in any corporation, the CEO and the CFO, Chief Financial Officer, could go to jail and could pay large fines. So that's what this new law started. And so it was real serious. So not only are we making sure we got support for everything, we're making sure the processes are right. So we had to look through every system. And right now in our election system, we can't even look at the system.
Right.
Tell the audience what Cash delivered last night and what the reality is here, because this is about as jaw-dropping as you can get, sir.
Yeah, let's set the stage. Let's remind everybody that in December of 2020, 60 Minutes aired a piece with the head of the Homeland Security Cybersecurity Division saying there were no foreign intrusions in the 2020 election. It was a perfectly clean election, he said. I think it was Chris Krebs was his name. We now know that to have been a false proclamation. First, we know a year later in 21, a bunch of Iranians were indicted in Manhattan on charges that they interfered in the election and hacked into a state database to obtain voter IDs and use them in a mal-influence operation against the American election. Now we know there was a second country that was more deeply involved in meddling into the election. The FBI in August 2020, so 3.5 months before the votes were cast that put Joe Biden in the presidency, that FBI believed that China had begun a mass operation to produce fake U.S. driver's licenses, move them to the United States, and have Chinese citizens here on our soil, both legally and illegally, go out and get fake mail-in ballots and vote to try to elect Joe Biden. By the way, the FBI intelligence says this Chinese operation from a Chinese intelligence source that the FBI was handling was designed to help Joe Biden beat Donald Trump. It's very important. That was the intention. The intelligence was strong enough to send out to all of the intelligence agencies, and then a few days later it was called back on the auspices that they wanted to re-interview the source. Now, the source was re-interviewed a second time, stuck to his story. In the meantime, the Customs and Border Patrol, Border Protection Agency, intercepted 20,000 of these fake driver's IDs, essentially corroborating the intelligence. But the Biden administration, the Chris Wray FBI, they simply covered this up. And for 5 years, we were kept in the dark until this intelligence document was sent last night to Chuck Grassley from Kash Patel.
No. We weren't kept in the dark, brother. You went after this.
That's true.
It was a bald-faced lie, was it not? They lied about this and covered it up.
Yeah.
They were lied.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah,
I just want to make sure I get that, because you went after this.
Yeah.
Every people, and we were called nutcases, kooks, conspiracy theorists. Under every bed we got a Chinese Communist Party member. All of that, right? And it turns out we were 100% accurate about directionally. We knew something was up there. Is that essentially what the story is this morning?
Yeah, there's another very important thing to keep in mind with this. This intelligence shows that China saw mail-in ballots as an enormous vulnerability during the COVID-19 pandemic. Our enemies look for weaknesses, not for strengths. They don't look for the hardest thing to do. They look for the easiest thing to do to us. That is a warning sign. Now, lots has happened since 2020, and with all of the voter ID and other things, we've tightened up laws in several states. And where we've tightened up the laws in the states, people vote more because they have greater confidence in the system. But China saw this as an exploitable operation, and I think that should concern all of us. And in any state that doesn't have their mail-in voting to the proximal best security measures, there's a foreign enemy looking to exploit it right now. That's what these documents.
And we have to, and that would be an automatic fail in the corporate world, and that company would be bankrupt. because no auditor is going to sign off on stuff that they can't see. You wouldn't say, if you're told, okay, sign off on this, what is it? You want to know exactly what you're signing off on. That's how it is in the corporate world. That's how it was taught to me. People of integrity, I was blessed to be around. And so I did that. And then I had an opportunity to move to Hong Kong and oversaw a big block of business over there for almost 10 years. And that's when I started writing with Jim at the Gateway Pundit around 2016. We both fell in love with Trump. We freaking love that guy. So funny, attractive, beautiful family, rich, just an American, and he loved this country, and he was not afraid to say whatever he needed to say.
Right.
And we loved that because the media was lying every day to us. You could see the difference between Gateway Pundit reporting and what was being said in the mainstream media. It's night and day. It still is.
It still is. Yeah, it really is night and day.
You know what also hit me today, James, is that it's beyond it's beyond just dishonest media. This is a fascist communist takeover of the human soul. That's what they want. They want to destroy us, and they do that, like you said earlier, through information and lies. And it's massive lies pushed at us every day. And if they say it enough times, then they think you'll believe it. And fortunately, something miraculous happened with Trump. We decided, no, that's bogus. No, you can say whatever you want about this guy. No, he's got more guts and heart than anybody I've ever seen. And so we didn't believe it. And it wasn't just us, it was everybody. It seemed like a lot of people weren't buying the media anymore. In the past, they could sell us on whatever it might be. And they couldn't do it all of a sudden. Everything they threw at this guy, Russia collusion and all that, was just garbage. So we were able to, it was amazing. It was really miraculous. And so in 2016, I started writing with Jim. I'm overseas. I got a full-time job, but and we're talking about every day. And I said, well, Ted Cruz can be eliminated in a month. I said, my background's numbers and stuff and dealing with actuaries all the time. So I know numbers pretty well. And I said, yeah, by this certain date, he's going to be done. There won't be enough delegates left for Ted Cruz to survive.
Right.
And sure enough, that day, I got some great attention. Back then, Drudge Report seemed to be king. If they linked to your piece, didn't matter who you were, New York Times or Gateway Pundit, you were thrilled because it drove a lot of traffic to your site. And I had 3 articles that were, 2 that were the top story those couple days of Ted Cruz. Here I am, an executive in Hong Kong, and I'm more thrilled about having an article up at Drudge than anything, It's pretty exciting. So that got me hooked, and I started writing for Jim every day. And then came Trump, then came the election. I wrote a lot of stuff on the financials and how Trump just crushed the records in the stock market. He has the record for the most consecutive days in a row breaking the all-time high, something like 15. He tied like Reagan on that. Mm-hmm. The highest increase in a year. All this stuff that was happening. He's just turned the economy around. Got everything moving in the right direction. At this whole time, remember, they had this massive weight on his shoulders called the Russia collusion lie. And we all know it's a lie. We knew it was then as we started digging into it. My background, James, was, an audit and stuff, and we couldn't think of having somebody audit an area that they had a bias with. If your wife worked in that area, you're not auditing it. I'm sorry that you're not. If you used to work in that area, if you have friends in that area, if you said things about that area that were negative or positive, you're not going to do the audit. I'm sorry. Our audits have to be independent. And that's how it is across the world. And certainly in our country or our company, that was the way it was. Yeah, I started noticing these guys that were doing this Russia collusion, they all hated Trump. They'd all said it, been in the media. Mm-hmm. This guy by the name of Weissman, Andrew Weissman, he was at Hillary Clinton's party that night that she was supposed to win. And he was a snake. He's just an absolute snake. And we found out once the Russia collusion took over, Weissman was in charge of that. And he had been, and Sidney Powell wrote a book about him back in the early 2000s about Enron, how he had just, crucified some guys back then in the Enron deal. And I found out, listen to this, I start writing about Weissman. I talked to Rudy Giuliani and Roger Stone and all these guys that know him, and they can't stand him. This guy's, he's just evil. He's just a snake. Mm-hmm. And one guy writes me from prison, and he says, Joe, I got to tell you my story. Weissman was his prosecutor 33 years ago.
Wow.
And in New York, and this guy, his name's Mike Sessa. He was in the mafia, and he was accused of murdering this guy. He said, "I didn't do it," so I turned myself in. I thought, well, I didn't do it. I think he knew who did do it. I think it was this hitman that Mark Wahlberg's coming out with here shortly in a movie about this nasty hitman, Scarpa or something.
Okay.
And anyways, what happened was Weissman ran that case. He didn't tell the defense or the judge who his key witness was, but his key witness was Scarpa, who many people thought committed the crime. And the FBI agent involved later on was charged with the same crime. Somehow he got off on a technicality. But Sessa's been in prison 33 years without parole for one murder that he's got all this information on it. A couple other groups were then indicted after him, and they found information. All their cases were thrown out. But Sessa and this other guy
still there.
Are still sitting in prison 33 years later. And he's been writing for me, seeing what I can do to help. And I'm trying to help the guy. But this is the kind of stuff that we can't even imagine. We're you talk about a lack of freedom and being put there. And, he says, I'm no saint, but I didn't do this. And the fact that he hasn't been given a pardon after 10 years, which is probably more customary, is outrageous. I think it's because it's Weissman, and they don't want him to get out and start talking about what Weissman did. And so
it's this same crew of people that's been screwing people over this whole time.
Amen.
Wow.
In that same office, he's pointed this stuff out to me. You had Andrew Weissman, you had James Comey, you had Loretta Lynch. All these people worked in that same office, and they all worked their way to the top of the DOJ, and they're just as crooked as hell. Just crooked. So, and I think the DOJ is still just absolutely crooked. They got to clean it out. They don't know that. They don't understand organizational behavior. They've got to get rid of the toxic and start all over. The head of an organization sets the tone for the whole organization. If you got somebody of ethics, we learned this as auditors. You could see it was an ethical company all the way through. If you had a scoundrel at top, good luck.
Everything is scoundrels all the way through.
Everything's garbage, and you can see it. And I could see that in the corporate world. So anyways, that's how I got involved with Gateway Pundit. I had a lot of exceptional reporting. I'd write it at night, kind of felt like it was my job to help the country. Jim's doing it all day long. And I got this great position. I'm flying around the Asia Pacific and seeing, doing audits and enjoying what I did. People loved me. I loved them. It was a great company. And then for me, you start now talking about how do you get attacked for being a truth teller in this by these communists and fascists. So first thing that I noticed was, I'm trying to think if it's actually the first thing, but in 2016, after Trump won, Facebook came out and said, "Oh, we're not censoring conservatives." I did a study for Jim from overseas, looked at the top 10 conservative sites on Facebook before the election. They were down 95% in volume from the year before. And Zuckerberg saying, "No, we don't censor conservatives." That was a lie. It's a bold lie to say that in front of Congress. He's still gotten away with it. It was a lie. We had statistics that showed otherwise. And then, so I remember that. And Facebook and his Facebook revenue dropped to, it was like 30% of his revenue dropped down to, 2-3% or something. And then there's these people that go out there and they start going to your advertisers. There's this one woman who's just vile, and she's not even born in the U.S., and she's been running around attacking the advertisers of Gateway Pundit. And that's why you see with many of these conservative websites, their ads are just garbage, fingernails and stuff like that, because because these fascists have successfully scared media and advertisers from sharing on these sites, even if you're getting 3.5 million a day, which Gateway Pundit's getting, and after the election, we were getting 5 million a day, as I was just dropping bombs on this election and how it didn't make sense. I ended up writing 3 books on the election called The Steal. Each volume was about the election, and you can get those at Amazon. You can also follow me in particular at joehoft.com. So I'm now kind of separated from Gateway Pundit. I'm writing over here, still sharing articles with Gateway Pundit with Jim. And then also I've been doing podcasts and interviews like this, etc., that I'll try to put up on my site. So I can do that. So that's joehoff.com, and then you can purchase my books there too. But I wrote 3 books, and they've been bestsellers on Amazon. And On the Steel, Roger Stone said these are going down as classics. And President Trump wrote me a letter after the first book saying, Joe, thank you.
Wow,
And
that's awesome.
think about that. That was back in 2021 or 2, you know, because he's out there on an island, you know. The media is saying he's an insurrectionist. He tried to stop the the process of the election. All a nasty lie from these nasty fascist communists, and of course it was all a lie. They were the ones that stole that election, and I've got all the proof. Again, my background audit. I looked at everything. I looked at every area I looked at. I realized as I got to the end of the chapter, and I have a lot of stories in this too that'll blow you away, but I'd say, well, and for this reason, this election never should have been certified.
Right.
You know, if one of these things was wrong, you can't certify it. In the corporate world, I mentioned the Sarbanes-Oxley, we called it SOX. If one key control in the entire world for a major corporation is not working properly, we keep finding issues with it, you can't sign off on the financials. That's how serious it is. Everything's broken with our elections. Everything. Next week, I'm invited to an event in D.C. at the Press Club, where I'm going to share that message too. We've been putting up with garbage. The evil monsters are telling us, "Oh no, this is legit." It's not. And you know, and you probably know. Well, you drive through these inner cities and you see they've been destroyed. I mean, beautiful. That used to be beautiful homes, all brick, now all boarded up or burnt down, or boarded up and burnt down. In St. Louis, North St. Louis, it's that way all the way to the airport from the inner city. It's just a hellhole. And yet they're trying to tell us they get 100% in these precincts in those areas, all for Kamala Harris. It's insanity. They keep telling this stuff. It's toxic. So my effort over the last few years has been really focused on the election. So I started getting targeted in 2020. I did a piece at the Gateway Pundit for Jim. I said, hey, this guy named Tedros at WHO is saying that 1 out of 30 people is going to die. I'm dealing with actuaries every day that look at this stuff, and I'm auditing their work, and I'm looking at this in 10 minutes. I said, no, he's lying. This isn't true. If the data that he's providing to support his, that measurement, if that's his data, then he's not telling the truth. It's going to be closer to the flu. And I wrote that up. The next day, InfoWars had us on, Alex Jones. And then the next day, I get doxxed by a company called Media Matters. And they are a nasty organization, a nonprofit that was started by George Soros, a fascist who was helping the Nazis in World War II, as many people know, just this nasty guy who was behind the scenes, for a long time. And anyways, they doxed me, and that ended my 20-year career at this corporation. I came back to the States in 2020. So,
wow.
So that's the kind of stuff that they do. They don't care. It's about silencing you and bankrupting you. Bankrupting is a part of the silence, if they can just stop you from sharing at all costs. And that's what, we've been living through. I come back, I dropped a number of articles when I started writing full time with Jim in 2020. And especially before the election with COVID, after the election, I was just dropping bombs. And that's what is in my books, all these articles we wrote. I saw immediately as an author, you look at the numbers, these numbers don't make sense. There's patterns in here. What the hell is this? Excuse my language. What is going on? And everything was it's just fantasy. It's gross. Like, what is going on? I'm used to, stuff being perfect. And I'm looking at this. This is a show. If you know what I mean. It's a mess. And, so that's what I wrote about, and we just got tremendous following then because there weren't many people doing it. Because the media is telling you, if you write about that,
right,
you're a liar. You're going to get censored. You might get arrested. You might get arrested because we started writing about the January 6ers, and it was a ruthless time for all of us. We saw President Trump made up crimes on him. I mean, that's really one of the kingpins, I think, to evil is target the guy like they're doing in Brazil right now. This Bolsonaro who had his election stolen from him, try to kill him. He almost died too. He was stabbed, and now punish him every day. Punish him every day, and that's what they wanted to do with Trump. They wanted to throw him in prison and see him rot for the rest of his life. Take away $500 million from him because they said Mar-a-Lago, which is a palace, is only worth $18 million, which is the biggest lie there ever was. Have him pay this crazy woman $70 million who claims that he raped her 20 years ago. She can't even say the day. So Trump can't provide an alibi with that because he could say, no, I was in Switzerland that day. But no, they won't give him the day so he could provide an alibi. The whole thing is just so sinister, sick, cunning. These people are smart, but they're using their God-given talents to push, evil. And the destruction with this, the thing today is with the technology we have, evil takes that. We're talking Hunger Games. We're talking dark, dark times for maybe almost ever, So, so we continue to fight and we continue to just face all sorts of hurdles. And I've had friends tell me, Joe, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? And maybe you as well. And
a lot of people. Yeah. My dad told me that. He said, James, why are you doing this? He's like, son, you're super smart. You can go do this. I said, this is what God called me to do. And this is what I do. And he was like, but because they had people threaten him. And he was like, man. And I was like, don't worry about it. He's like, why are you not worried? I said, because God going to protect you. And then he found out that the guy who threatened him got arrested. And he was like, the guy just got arrested randomly. And I said, yeah, no, God going to protect you. And I think that's where it's hard to relay this message to people about this warfare that we're in. It's really not our fight. It's God's fight, but he needs men in the fight because he functions through men. Just like that wickedness functions through people like Comey and Wiseman and all those. If there's no men prepared to stand there in battle, then he has no vessel to fight through. And that's the problem that we run into. That's what I see going on right now. It's like everything that's happening with recent Epstein issues, and it's almost as if it's an attack on all the vessels that would stand and fight to say, okay, I'm disappointed and I quit. You know what I'm saying? I quit. I don't want to do it anymore. I'm not getting my way. It's offense. It's division. It's disappointment. But it's not really, you don't get to choose how the victory comes because you're not smart enough to see what's the best route to victory. Your job is to stand there and do what he tells you to do. And if you think you can get victory on your own against satanically influenced evil people, then you're crazy. I mean, think about what they've been able to do, Joe. I mean, from everything you've explained to what you've experienced that you won't talk about, to the things that are people quote unquote call fourth dimensional chess moves. But the reality of it is they're shameless and they're evil. And it's hard to be the person who can't be shamed, who's never embarrassed. Like, let's take, what's the lady's name? The one
AOC?
The one from Minnesota that's a Muslim that married her brother.
Yeah,
what's her
Ilhan
name?
Omar.
How do you beat someone who's not ashamed of being married to their brother?
Yeah.
How do you beat him?
Well, she's, here's a story too behind her. We wrote about this. I'm going to tell you some stories. One story came out today, and then I'll jump back to Ilhan.
Okay.
Wrote 2 years ago about Adam Schiff. These people sent me this information. This is how things work now. You see stuff on the internet, or people send you stuff, and once you start trusting people, you realize what you can and cannot put up. Because other people send you stuff to put up so you can get yourself in problems, So you got to be, you got to pray that you're, on the right track and putting the right stuff up. But we found out about Adam Schiff 2 years ago that he had a house in Maryland that he was claiming as his primary residence. Well, he's a rep out of California, so he has to have a residence there too. Right. And wrote up this big piece 2 years ago. Wrote up numerous articles after that. Last night, President Trump writes up on Truth Social that Adam Schiff, is just this dishonest guy. He's now the Fannie Mae has looked into this finally, and he's in trouble because he's got his primary residence both in Maryland and apparently in California. And so finally our stuff's getting, reaches the top. And that was really good news today, because, we don't want crooked, lying people in our running our country. We want honest, good people, which I don't think we have right now, quite frankly, other than I do think Trump and his team's doing marvelous work right now so far. Even we can talk about Epstein thing in a minute. But Ilhan, we wrote about her. I had this guy give me this support, and here's her story. She was in, I think, Somalia. Is that right?
Yep, Somalia.
And it was ran by an evil regime, Islamist regime, and she tells this story about how she left and how terrible it was. She left. They went to Kenya and then they made it here, where her dad changed their names. Her brother got sent to the UK, so she claims she was married to him to get him to the US.
Okay.
And but the dad, when she tells her story, this guy in Intel starts talking to me about it. He says, well, she says, we barely got out of the country, but we caught the plane out of the country. He points out, well, Somalia, the average income's like $3 a month or something. So the only people making money there were the regime that was running the place. So if she got a plane to get out of there, that meant that her family was part of that regime, because they're the only ones with money in the country. And, and so that was one clue about her family. She said how her dad had a certain position, and he pointed out, well, he was head of propaganda. That was his job. And then they escaped the country at the last minute. She talked about being in a gated community or home. And of course, the only person with a gated home in an area where the average, income's like $3 a month is the wealthy monsters that are running the place. Right. So she comes from this elite family that sneaks out of the country before they get killed, and then makes its way to Kenya, changes their names illegally to come into the U.S., so commits immigration fraud. Then she commits immigration fraud with her brother, where she claims that she's his, and she should be kicked out of this country. It's that was criminal acts, and she's done a number of things since then that were also, I believe, lies in order to get to where she's at. So she's real dangerous. She doesn't love this country. She's smart. But there's no allegiance there to the U.S.
She's wickedly smart. You can look at her and tell it's a wickedness to her intelligence that's otherworldly. I watch interviews, and the phrases she picks, the head movements, the tonality, it's like this woman is Jezebelic evil from the Bible. You know what I'm saying? And it's terrifying. I believe, Joe, the problem we have is the conservative propaganda arm is strong to get the truth out. We're just not seeing handcuffs go on people, and we're not seeing results. And for example, you guys were writing about the stuff with COVID. I'll never forget. I'm laying across the bed. I go to Gateway Pundit. You guys are breaking the ballots, being stuffed, and it's all breaking from you guys. But we haven't seen all the arrests we need to see for that. And therein lies the problem. The information is there. The truth is there. The research is there. It's actually getting to the right hands now, but we're lagging on the consequences for the actions. And therein lies the frustration with everyone else, because you're frustrated because the consequences aren't there. And I think that's the problem. I think when we get to Epstein, talking about, therein lies the problem with the Epstein issue. It's the consequences.
No, absolutely. You're absolutely right. I think, first of all, we got to win the election, because if we're not in power, we're done.
Exactly.
We'll see. They'll just kill us. Next time, they'll just start shooting people in the streets, probably. I mean, really, literally. I mean, they shot, to Ashley Bobbin on January 6th. They killed Roseanne Boylan and two other guys that were, I believe, they had heart attacks, guys, about your age, my age, whatever. That was, a flash bomb blew up in their face. They didn't see it coming, no warning. All of a sudden, they have a heart attack. 4 people died that day. So we think, oh, yeah, they're going to start killing. What do you mean? 4 people died on January 6th. Our media said that 5 Capitol policemen died that day. That's a lie. They've been saying it for 3 years after. That was a total lie. Not a single policeman died that day. 4 Trump supporters died that day. Another 4 or 5 committed suicide rather than going to prison. These cases against him were outrageous. The judges were absolutely grotesque. Judges need to be removed. I'm sorry, we cannot have people like that in our courts anymore. They're not judges. They're evil
Activists, evil activists.
I talked to this one lady. I'll tell you her name, and she called me one day.
Mm-hmm.
Her name's Mickey Whitlock. Whitlock, I think's her last name. Ashley Bobbitt's mom.
Okay.
So Ashley gets shot and killed in the Capitol that day. And her name's quickly forgotten by the media. They never mention her name.
Mm-hmm.
If they do, they would have to be with she was an insurgent,
a terrorist,
criminal, which she wasn't. And anyway, her mom stayed in D.C. and went to about every January 6th case she could. She supported these guys. If they came in from out of town, she would find them a place to stay because a lot of these guys didn't have any money.
Right.
They're just guys that showed up on January 6th and since maybe lost their jobs, having a hard time making it, and because they've been targeted. And she said, I was in this one courtroom, and this judge, Amy Berman Jackson, who was an evil judge in Roger Stone's case in 2016, or actually 2019, just did stuff that never heard of before. Put him on a gag order. Didn't allow him the evidence that would have exonerated him that was in the Mueller report. He wanted to see the Mueller report. She wouldn't let him. She says, I'll look at it and I'll let you know if there's anything in there. And she lies. And she says, there's nothing in there related to you that would exonerate you. It was a total lie. It's written in there that basically Roger Stone did nothing wrong.
Right.
But they wouldn't put that in there. And so she sent Stone to prison. Anyways, Ashley Bobbitt's mom tells me, I'm looking at her and all I saw was a demon. And I look away just because I can't stop. And I turn back and all I see is a demon in that judge's chair. It was just, so shocking. And for some reason, she called me a couple hours after that. And I don't know if she's ever called me before or since. But that's what's really going on. Like you said, she could see it, and I think people that are real spiritual understand what's going on. And it's this battle between the truth. The truth is godliness, and not always easy, but it's that's okay. It's the right thing. Doing the right thing isn't always easy.
Right.
Sometimes it's real easy. But so anyways, so we're fighting this battle. It's pretty brutal. We've done a lot of stuff. There's a lot of ways that they attack, and it's brutal. It's brutal. They want to bankrupt you and shut you down, and they'll lie.
But Joe,
about
just so you know, Joe, they can't. Just so you'll know this, Joe, they can't. The only thing that when a battle of spirits happens, which is when you see these wicked spirits and these people come against you and your family, they only can do what the Lord allows them to do, which is why you say you guys have people praying for you on the hour, every other hour. What I would encourage you guys to do is go through the gates of prayer. Like, for example, 12 noon every day, stop and give 15 minutes of prayer. 6 p.m., 15 minutes of prayer. Just make sure you stay in prayerful. And then what the Lord does is he shows you what they're going to do. And I've experienced this to where when I'm praying, the Lord will show me, okay, this person is going to attack you on this day. What do you want me to do? You have a choice, son. You could be quiet and let me deal with it, or you can do it. Well, what's the price I pay? And he'll explain the price. And I'd be like, nah, I'm just going to shut up. I'm going to shut up. And so people attack. And they'd be like, James, why you say nothing? Because God told me they was going to do it. And on top of that, now it's his fight with them. And then you just sit back and you watch him destroy those people. For example, targeted prayer, like the lady who's been going after you guys' advertisement. No. People need to be praying against that lady. And what end up happening is God's going to judge that lady and boom, something going to happen to her. Because your mission, your goal, what you guys have been doing is standing for righteousness. And anybody that gets in the way of what the Lord wants to do, he going to punish. The issue is, as Christians, we've been taught this. You got to just sit back and take every little thing. It's not necessarily that. It's going to be times where you're going to make a decision. I can fight this battle and then I'll get human-like results from this fight, or I can let the Lord fight this battle and I'm going to get his result from the fight. Some fights I want to fight. I'll be like, Lord, I want to fight this battle. He'd be like, well, I'll fight it for you, but you don't need to do it. And I'm like, I'm going to go get this guy because I don't like this guy. And then I know based upon what I do, what I say, it's going to be this back and forth, tick and tat, and all the rest of this foolishness. If I let him deal with it, that guy will go to bed that night and then have a dream and be scared out of his mind. And we have to, as Christians in media, understand that without prayer, we're at the whims of these people. And they're going to rise up these little, I call them like little minions. They rise up these minions and they come in waves. One minion comes and attacks this, and then the next minion comes. But it's all motivated by the spirit of evil that's behind them. And the way you defeat that is targeted prayer. Those people by name. God, Mary Solister is stopping your work that you want done because of A, B, C, D, E, F, G, Lord. And you said that you will fight our battles. And Mary Solister wants to fight. That means she's fighting you, Lord. I ask that you deal with Mary Solister. And then sit back and watch Mary just crumble. And it happens over and over and over again in prayer for us, because I've learned if I fight that battle, I'll win. He'll hand me the victory, but I'm going to take some injuries and damage in that battle. You know, just you guys got to present everything to the Lord. Everything. Because what comes next is I don't know if you noticed it, is as if the warfare is intensifying and the darkness is intensifying. It was like we had Donald Trump elected, all this light comes in, and then here comes this darkness, just woof, like it just rose up.
Yeah, right.
That means we're almost to the end of the battle and we're almost to the victory. And as the closer you get to the victory, the darker it gets. And so that's why everybody's agitated, frustrated. That's why last month for Pride Month, we saw Elon Musk and Donald Trump going at it, and Donald stepping back and saying, whoa, I'm not going to engage with Elon. And Elon continuing to engage while people marched in the streets naked with children, while people burnt buildings. And you're just sitting there saying, whoa, what is all this crap going on? And I'm sitting there smiling because I'm like, we about to win. If we don't mess up, we're about to win. And that's where we are. And that's why I say it's important that everybody be more prayerful, because the way battles work, when you defeat an enemy in the spirit realm, when you confront them in their little realm, they attack. And then they throw everything. And to me, this looks like that. I'm going to throw the kitchen sink. I'm throwing the refrigerator. I'm throwing the sofa. I'm throwing the window sills at you. Attack. That means we almost there. It means we almost got them. And you hit on it. You said we got to win 2026. And guess what? Everything that's happening right now, all of this Epstein stuff, what is it putting in jeopardy? The midterm elections for 2026. People getting upset, getting aggravated, getting disgusted. Oh, I don't like Trump. No, shut up and go vote in 2026, because we got to get the House and the Senate, and then you'll see some results. And I just think that's where we are, you know?
I agree.
And I'm thankful. I'm not going to hold you anymore. I just want you to know I'm thankful for you coming over. Every time God sends men like you to me, it's so we can pray and we can talk and then get a word. And I'd be like, oh, Lord, what's in this for me? He'd be like, just do what I'm telling you to do. You guys are on a cusp of victory. Do not get discouraged. Don't get upset. Don't get angry. Press into him and watch what happens. I'm telling you, it's almost over. It's just, we got to stand strong. And I think that when you talk to other men of influence like yourself, that has to be the message, because they're all going to be, what do you say? They're going to be disappointed. Division going to set in. And the other word you said was perfection. People think victory looks like perfection. And you understand that perfection only exists in controlled circumstances. It's the only way you're going to get perfect victory. Anybody who thinks things need to be perfect thinks they're God, because the only one that's perfect is God. If you want perfect victory, it's got to come through God. And even his perfect victories don't look perfect to us as men, because we can't think the way he thinks. We can't see things the way he sees them. And so we just have to humble ourselves. And what I mean that towards him, and then press into him and let him destroy the enemies. Donald Trump was prayed into office. We all know this. And so the thing that saved his life was the prayers of men and women. And if they can get men and women disappointed and get them to stop praying for him and for this nation, which is what this attack is about, they can do anything they want. They can do anything they want. So now is the time where everybody got to be praying and not back down. And that's all this attack is, brother. It's all it is.
Wow.
All right, I got that out. Joe, thank you, man. This has been awesome. I wish you guys the best of luck. I'm always here if you guys ever need to reach out. And I'm humbled and honored that the Lord let me interview one of his warriors that are out here really in the battle, man. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, buddy.
I'm humbled.
Let me mention, so joehoff.com, thegatewaypundit.com is where you can follow us. And also, we've got a big event in Vegas, Las Vegas, in early August that we're selling tickets to right now. You can go to Gateway Pundit or joehoff.com to get information on that. We'd love to have you there. It's going to be a great time. We've got incredible guests. I don't know if you... Rudy Giuliani, General Flynn, Roger Stone, Steve Bannon, Laura Logan, the list goes on and on. It's just a great group of people that are going to be there, and it should be really great. So if you can do it, get yourself there. We'd love to have you.
Okay, sounds good. Do you have like a little promo for that event for ticket sales so I can blend it into this? Yeah,
yes, I can send it to you. Yeah,
send it to me. I'm going to blend it into this interview.
Okay, great.
Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this has been a great time with Joe Hoff. And I mean, guys, look how much God loves us that he brings us guys like Joe to come and have a conversation. Check out the books. I want you guys to start at least purchasing books. You know how this works. These guys are cut off on every side on finances because the wicked people don't want to make no money. So let's show some support. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, it's been another great interview. I appreciate you, and I'll see you the next time.